All right, let's jump right into today's explainer because I am absolutely thrilled to share this one with you. It's the story of the long-forgotten rain lily, a true micro-hero's journey. It just goes to show how some of the most dramatic stories of survival can happen literally right on our own balconies. We're going to be unpacking a really fascinating, honestly pretty touching diary entry from August 12th, 2026. The author, who just goes by Ang, titled it Notes on Gardening Part 984. And sure, on the surface, it sounds like just another brief log about a houseplant. But trust me, this is an epic tale of extreme neglect, incredible survival, and a beautiful second chance. Honestly, if you've ever felt a pang of guilt over having a bit of a black thumb, this explainer is absolutely going to resonate with you. So let's start by looking at this specific phrase Ang uses, let nature take its course. Now, we've all heard that, right? In the universally relatable gardener's code. That basically translates to, yeah, I completely forgot about this plant. Ang is super upfront about not paying it much attention, maybe tossing it some accidental water every now and then. And it wasn't malicious, it's just life. We have all been there. You bring a plant home, you stick it on a shelf, and then suddenly a month goes by, and you realize you've essentially left a living thing to fend for itself in a tiny terracotta desert. Let's officially meet our resilient protagonist, the rain lily, or if we want to get scientific, zephyranthes-rosea. According to Ang's super detailed diary logs, specifically going way back to a post labeled Part 639, this plant wasn't even a planned purchase. It was a total afterthought, just an unplanned acquisition grabbed at a plant sale to, evaluate the species. So from day one, it was never the star of the show. It lacked priority. But as we're going to see, this unassuming little bulb packed an incredibly stubborn will to live, even when things got really, really rough. Which brings us to the crisis point. You can literally trace this cascade of disaster. First, it was an unplanned purchase, which naturally led to the neglect we just talked about. But then, step 3 hits. A relentless, scorching heat wave swept through last year. For a forgotten plant trapped in a small pot, that is a monumental test of endurance. And the rain lily? It wilted entirely. Every single bit of green just shriveled away to nothing. So logically, Ang arrived at step 4, the tragic conclusion that the plant was simply a goner. Assumed dead, game over. Usually, this is exactly where the story ends. But here is the massive turning point of the whole explainer, and it hinges on such a passive decision. Ang writes, even so, I kept the bulb around in a shaded area. I mean, talk about a lazy afterthought saving the day. All hope was lost, the visible plant was totally crispy, but instead of chucking the pot into the trash or the compost bin, Ang just kind of pushed it out of the way, left it alone in the shadows of a shaded area on the balcony. And sometimes doing absolutely nothing is the best possible move you can make. Because beneath the dirt, there was some hidden science happening. While Ang was 100% convinced this plant was dead, the rain lily had actually just entered dormancy. It's this brilliant evolutionary survival mechanism. Basically, a bulb like this will just shut down all of its visible above-ground operations to conserve energy when the environment gets completely hostile, like during that lethal heat wave. So it was literally tricking its owner. It wasn't dead at all, it was just hunkered down in its little shaded bunker, waiting for the danger to pass. And then we get what I like to call the perfect storm of moisture. It's this completely accidental 3-step formula for a botanical comeback. First, it was safely tucked away in that shade, safe from the baking sun. Second, Ang was just doing a mundane chore, washing the backyard balcony, which ended up giving the forgotten pot a massive, unexpected splash of water. And third, the grand finale, the seasonal rains, finally arrived. These 3 completely random factors combined to give this sleeping microhero the exact, consistent moisture it desperately needed to finally wake up. And just think about the result for a second. This is the absolute climax of Ang's entry. Against all the odds, after surviving a brutal heat wave and months in a barren pot, this forgotten, presumed dead plant manages to sprout brand new, vibrant green leaves. Can you imagine the absolute shock Ang must have felt walking onto the balcony and seeing that? The rain lily literally resurrected itself from the dirt. It's just a staggering testament to how incredibly resilient nature can be. So, as a well-deserved reward for surviving all of that, our tough little bulb got a major lifestyle upgrade. Ang moved it out of the shadows and into a brand new microclimate on the balcony. Now, a microclimate is just a highly localized environment that differs slightly from the space around it. And apparently, Ang found the perfect sweet spot tailored just for this plant. According to the diary, the rain lily is now absolutely thriving on its own. It finally found its niche. But notice the massive shift in the story here. We aren't just looking at a plant surviving anymore. We're witnessing the gardener's redemption. Aang totally transforms. The neglectful owner who just let nature take its course is gone, replaced by a hyper-attentive caretaker. Aang realizes this little survivor is thriving and decides, you know what, it deserves respect. It gets a dedicated pot. And even better, Aang commits to hunting down the absolute perfect potting mix to make sure this fighter has everything it needs for the future. Talk about a 180. Which actually leaves us with a bit of a cliffhanger. Aang is now actively agonizing over a serious horticultural dilemma, choosing between two very different potting soils. On one hand, there's this wild sandy mix, literally soil harvested straight from the wild. It's natural, it's gritty, and it might perfectly mimic the harsh environment this survivor clearly tolerates. But on the other hand, there's the usual rice husk mix, the trusty, reliable go-to for potted plants. Which one is actually going to be best for the rain lily? Aang wants to get this right. And Aang wraps up this saga with a simple, brilliant little note in the diary. Let's see how this goes. Till the next post. It's such a great reminder for us that this intimate, tiny experiment from part 984 is still unfolding. The rain lily survived the worst of the worst, got a miraculous second chance, and is now sitting at the start of a brand new chapter in a new pot. We don't even know the final outcome of that soil choice yet, but honestly, the renewed sense of care and optimism is what makes this entry so special. Which brings us to our final takeaway for today. I really want to leave you with this question. What forgotten things in your own life are just waiting for a change in microclimate to bloom again? Yes, this was a story about a tiny houseplant, but at its core, it's about resilience. It's a reminder that sometimes things aren't actually dead, they're just dormant. Whether it's an old hobby you dropped, a goal you thought was lost, or a neglected relationship, maybe it just needs a bit of rest, an unexpected splash of care, and a slightly new environment to thrive once more. Think about what might be dormant in your life right now, just waiting to sprout.